You know that feeling when someone's presence somehow makes you smaller? Not through what they say out loud, but through 1,000 micro moments of withdrawal, criticism, or cold silence that chip away at your sense of self. You start to question whether your feelings are valid, whether you're overreacting, whether maybe, just maybe, you deserve the way you're being treated. But here's what most people don't understand. Destructive relationships don't start with red flags. They start with hope. They start with moments of genuine connection so profound that you mistake them for proof that this person is your person. And by the time you realize something is deeply wrong, you've already rewired your entire nervous system around their moods, their needs, their version of reality. You're no longer living your life, you're managing theirs. What if I told you that the patterns that keep you trapped in these relationships are not a sign of weakness, but a sign that something much deeper has been damaged in your psychology? Not something broken beyond repair, but something that has learned to survive in ways that now work against you. And what if the reason you keep attracting these relationships, or staying in them long after the damage becomes visible, has nothing to do with bad luck, and everything to do with how your mind was shaped long before you met them? This is not relationship advice. This is psychology. And if there's a name you need to understand to see what's really happening inside these dynamics, the name you need is Harriet Lerner. She spent decades studying how people hurt each other and, more importantly, why we stay. Because understanding destructive relationships means understanding something most people spend their entire lives avoiding: the truth about what we accept and why we accept it. So take a breath, clear your mind, because what I'm about to reveal will change the way you see every relationship you've ever been in. There's a psychological phenomenon so common it barely registers anymore. You meet someone. They make you feel alive in a way you haven't felt in years. Maybe it's their intensity. Maybe it's the way they seem to understand you in moments others miss. Maybe it's the promise they represent, that they can fill whatever emptiness exists inside you. You think you're falling in love, but what you're actually experiencing is something more primitive and more dangerous: recognition. You're recognizing patterns that were written into your nervous system so long ago that they don't feel like patterns anymore. They feel like destiny. Destructive relationships don't announce themselves, they seduce you. The person across from you is not trying to destroy you. Most of the time, they're as trapped in their own dynamics as you are becoming. But whether or not they're conscious of it doesn't matter. What matters is that something in you responds to something in them with the intensity of a match meeting dry wood. And the reason isn't romance, it's familiarity. Psychologist John Bowlby called this attachment theory, but it goes much deeper than that. Your attachment system, the part of you that learned how to love, trust, and connect, was shaped by the relationships you witnessed and experienced long before you could think about them rationally. If you grew up watching someone you loved be distant, unpredictable, or emotionally withholding, your young nervous system learned an equation. Love equals unpredictability. Love equals working hard to finally get approval. Love equals pain that occasionally releases into relief. And when you meet an adult who offers exactly that same equation, something deep inside you lights up with recognition. This isn't coincidence. This is your nervous system following the map it was given. The moment they pull away, you double down. The moment they're cold, you become warmer, more accommodating, more understanding. You start to believe that if you can just say the right thing, be the right way, anticipate their needs better, then maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time you'll finally be enough to make them stay. This isn't weakness. This is loyalty to an old promise you made to yourself as a child. The promise to keep trying, to be good enough, to earn love through endless effort. But here's what makes these relationships so destructive. They confirm what you secretly believed all along. That love is conditional, that you have to earn it, that your worth is measured by how much you're willing to sacrifice. And the more you sacrifice, the more the other person becomes accustomed to having their needs met at your expense. It's not a relationship anymore. It's a dynamic. It's a system. And both people are trapped in it, each one playing their part perfectly, each one unable to see that they're hurting the other because they're too focused on surviving what the other person is doing to them. The tragedy is that this recognition, this intense feeling of being deeply understood, is actually your warning system misfiring. You're not being understood. You're being mirrored. You're meeting someone who knows exactly which wounds to touch, which needs to exploit, which insecurities to weaponize. Sometimes they do this consciously. Sometimes they do it completely unconsciously because they're following their own patterns from their own damage. But the result is the same. You are being matched with someone whose pathology aligns perfectly with yours. And the more you try to make it work, the more you reinforce the pattern. The more you accept mistreatment to keep the peace, the more normal it becomes. The more you rationalize their behavior to make sense of it, the further you drift from your own reality. If this resonates with you, if you found yourself in this cycle more than once, then you need to understand something. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to change it. So click that subscribe button. What I'm about to share in the next section will change the way you understand why you've stayed this long, and more importantly, how to finally leave. Most people imagine destructive relationships as something obvious: yelling, physical violence, blatant cruelty. But the most dangerous relationships are the ones that don't announce their destruction. They hide it behind ambiguity, behind plausible deniability, behind a constant fog of confusion, where you're never quite sure if you're being mistreated or if you're just being too sensitive. This is what psychologists call coercive control, and it's far more prevalent than overt abuse, and it works precisely because it's invisible. Imagine your mind as a room with clear walls. You can see yourself. You can see the boundaries between you and the world. But what happens when someone slowly convinces you that those walls don't exist? What happens when every time you express a need or a feeling or an opinion, you're met with something that makes you second-guess yourself? A dismissal disguised as concern, criticism framed as helping you improve, jealousy presented as proof they love you, isolation justified as protecting your relationship. It starts so small, so reasonable, so loving. They ask who you're texting. Then they suggest you're less fun since you've been spending time with your friends. Then they mention how certain family members don't really support your relationship. Before long, you're not being physically imprisoned. You're being psychologically imprisoned, and the walls are made of doubt. Doubt about your own judgment, your own perceptions, your own mind. This is what Harriet Lerner calls the erosion of self. It's not a sudden shattering. It's a slow wearing away. And it happens because we're designed to trust people we love. We're neurologically wired to believe the people closest to us, to give them the benefit of the doubt, to assume they have our best interest at heart. When someone uses this against you, when they deliberately exploit your capacity for trust, they're not just hurting you. They're weaponizing the very mechanisms that make you capable of love. Your openness becomes a liability. Your sensitivity becomes evidence that you're broken. Your need for connection becomes proof that you need them to fix you. And the person doing this, they're getting something crucial in return. They're getting control. They're getting certainty in a world that terrifies them. Because here's what almost nobody talks about. The person in the destructive role is usually just as broken. They're usually just as afraid. But instead of turning that fear inward and doing the work to heal it, they're turning it outward. They're creating a small world where they can maintain the illusion of power, of certainty, of being right. And they need you in that world, playing your role, performing your dysfunction, validating their version of reality. The architecture of control is sophisticated because it borrows the language of love. I'm hard on you because I care about you. I need to know where you are because I worry about you. I don't want you seeing those people because they're a bad influence. I'm just being honest when I say those things about your appearance or your family or your potential. It's all couched in care. It's all justified as protection. But underneath it, there's a simple equation. Your needs are less important than my stability. Your reality is less valid than my interpretation of it. Your freedom is a threat that must be managed, and the more you internalize this, the more you organize your life around preventing the other person's emotional distress. You become hypervigilant. You scan for danger constantly. You memorize their moods like weather patterns. You learn exactly which topics will trigger a withdrawal, which questions will provoke defensiveness, which times of day they're most likely to be vulnerable enough to connect with you. You're not in a relationship. You're in a survival situation, and your nervous system knows it, even if your conscious mind is still trying to convince you that this is love. Your nervous system is not rational. It's ancient. It operates underneath your conscious awareness, sending signals about danger and safety based on patterns it learned long before you had the cognitive capacity to understand them. And in a destructive relationship, this system becomes completely confused because the person who represents your primary attachment, the person you should feel safest with, is simultaneously the source of your danger. Your nervous system is receiving contradictory messages constantly: safety and threat, comfort and pain, connection and abandonment. They kiss you with genuine tenderness. Then hours later they make a comment that feels like a knife. You can't predict when it's coming. You can't understand why they switched, and your body responds to this unpredictability by staying in a constant state of low-level activation. You stop sleeping well. Your digestion suffers. Your immune system weakens. Your capacity to focus disintegrates. You're exhausted all the time, but you can't quite identify why. You're living in a state of hypervigilance that would be appropriate if you were actually in physical danger. But you're not. You're in your home with someone you love, and your nervous system is treating it like a war zone. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the world's leading trauma researchers, discovered something crucial. Trauma isn't just psychological, it's neurological. It literally changes the structure of your brain. Repeated, unpredictable emotional harm does the same thing that physical trauma does. It sensitizes your nervous system. It shrinks your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought and perspective. It enlarges your amygdala, your fear center. Over time, you're less able to think clearly and more reactive to perceived threats. You're less able to remember your own needs and more focused on managing the other person's emotions. Your brain is literally being reorganized by the stress hormones being released in your body day after day, month after month, year after year. And the cruelest part is that you blame yourself. You think you're becoming neurotic. You think you're losing your mind. You think you're the problem. But what's actually happening is your nervous system is adapting to an abnormal situation exactly as designed. You're not broken. You're traumatized. And there's a massive difference. The invisible grip becomes tighter because you internalize it. You don't need them to control you anymore. You do it to yourself. You second-guess every decision. You minimize your own needs. You exaggerate their positive qualities and excuse their negative ones. You catastrophize about what will happen if you leave them. You find reasons to stay, practical reasons, financial reasons, reasons rooted in fear that if you leave, you might never find love again. Because by now, you've forgotten what love feels like when it doesn't involve constant effort. You've forgotten what it feels like to be around someone and feel more like yourself, not less. You've forgotten that connection shouldn't require you to dismantle your personality piece by piece. The nervous system is powerful precisely because we're not aware of how much it controls us. You don't think yourself into staying. Your nervous system has learned that staying is safer than leaving, even though objectively you know that's not true. Even though the evidence is stacking up that this relationship is destroying you. Even though everyone who loves you is begging you to go. Your body is still in survival mode, and survival mode says, stay, because at least you know what this threat looks like. At least you know how to manage this specific danger. The unknown is more terrifying. This is why simply leaving is not enough. You can walk out the door, but if your nervous system hasn't healed, if your attachment system hasn't learned new patterns, if your brain hasn't reorganized itself, then you'll find yourself gravitating toward the same dynamic again with a different person, Because you're not actually attracted to a specific person. You're attracted to a specific nervous system state. You're unconsciously searching for someone who can recreate that familiar dysregulation, because at least familiar dysregulation feels like home. At least it confirms what you believe about yourself and love and what you deserve. The escape isn't geographic, it's psychological, and it requires understanding something most people spend their lives avoiding. There's a moment in every destructive relationship when the pain of staying becomes greater than the fear of leaving. For some people, it's a single incident, something that happens that makes them finally see the pattern clearly. For others, it's an accumulation, 1,000 small betrayals that finally reach a tipping point. And for some, it never happens. They stay until the relationship destroys them, or they stay until the other person finally leaves, because leaving requires something that most people in these dynamics don't believe they have. It requires the belief that they deserve better. And if you were taught early and often that your worth is conditional, that your needs are secondary, that love means sacrifice, then this belief doesn't come naturally. It has to be fought for. It has to be chosen every single day, sometimes every single hour, in direct defiance of everything your nervous system is telling you about danger and safety. Leaving is not the end of the story. Leaving is the beginning, because what comes after is even harder than what came before. It's the slow, painful process of reclaiming a self that has been fragmented. It's learning to trust your own judgment again when you've spent years doubting it. It's feeling the full weight of the grief, not just for the relationship, but for the version of yourself that you lost inside it. It's understanding that the way you were treated was not your fault, but the healing from it is your responsibility. And that's not a burden. That's actually where your power lives. When you stop waiting for the other person to change, or to apologize, or to finally understand what they did to you, and you accept that the only change that matters is the one you create in yourself, that's when liberation becomes possible. The work of reclaiming your life after a destructive relationship is what some psychologists call reparenting yourself. Because you have to do the work that should have been done when you were young. You have to learn to comfort yourself when you're scared. You have to learn to set boundaries without guilt. You have to learn to say no without over-explaining. You have to learn to want things and go after them without needing permission. You have to learn that love doesn't have to hurt, that connection doesn't require self-abandonment, that you can be yourself fully and still be loved. But here's what makes this so difficult. None of this happens at the conscious level. Your conscious mind can understand all of this intellectually. You can read books about healthy relationships. You can go to therapy. You can know objectively that you deserve better. But your nervous system doesn't care about your conscious knowledge. Your nervous system only cares about safety. And safety is what it knows. So the real work isn't cognitive. It's nervous system retraining. It's creating new experiences of connection that feel different, even though they might feel boring at first. It's spending time with people who are steady, consistent, and genuinely interested in your well-being, and allowing yourself to feel the absence of crisis. It's learning that safety is not exciting, and that's okay. It's rebuilding your trust in your own perceptions, slowly, carefully, one choice at a time. This is not a quick process. This is not something you heal from in 6 months or a year. This is the work of a lifetime, because you're not just healing from one relationship, you're healing from a pattern. You're rewiring neural pathways that were established decades ago. You're learning to see yourself through eyes that aren't distorted by someone else's cruelty or indifference. You're learning to listen to the voice inside you that knows what you need, even though it's been silenced for so long. And as you do this work, something profound starts to happen. You stop looking for someone to complete you, and you start becoming complete in yourself. You stop needing someone to validate your feelings, and your own inner validation becomes enough. You stop making excuses for people who hurt you, and you start expecting kindness as a baseline, not as a miracle. You stop choosing people based on the intensity of the attraction, and you start choosing based on the consistency of their character. You start understanding, finally, that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. And if you can't be kind to yourself, if you can't believe in yourself, if you can't choose your own well-being, then no amount of love from another person will fix that. Most people think that healing from a destructive relationship means learning to love better the next time, but that's the wrong metric. Healing means learning to know yourself better. It means understanding why you accepted the unacceptable. It means recognizing the ways you abandoned yourself to keep another person comfortable. And critically, it means not blaming yourself for any of it, while simultaneously taking full responsibility for changing the pattern going forward. This is the paradox that most people struggle with. How do you forgive yourself for what you didn't know was happening while also holding yourself accountable for learning? The first step is radical honesty about what happened, not the story you've been telling yourself to make sense of it, not the version where you were partly responsible because you weren't good enough, not the story where they couldn't help it because of their trauma. The actual story, what they did, how it made you feel, what you lost, what you compromised, what you accepted that you should never have accepted. This sounds simple, but it's not. Because most people in destructive relationships have spent so long managing the other person's feelings that they've lost the ability to have their own feelings about what happened to them. You've been so focused on being understanding, being compassionate, seeing both sides, that you haven't allowed yourself to be angry, to be hurt, to be furious. This anger is not destructive. This anger is fuel. This anger is your psyche insisting that you were wronged, that what happened was not acceptable, that you matter. Let yourself feel it. Let it move through your body. Don't rationalize it. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't reframe it as compassion yet. First comes the rage. Because without the rage, there's no real boundary. Without the rage, there's just resignation. After the anger comes the grief. And this is longer and slower and more exhausting because you're not just grieving the relationship, you're grieving the hopes you had for it. You're grieving the time you lost. You're grieving the version of yourself that you could have become if you hadn't been consumed by managing someone else's emotional state. You're grieving the innocence that is now gone, the ability to see love as simple, straightforward, safe. And you're grieving the future you thought you were going to have with this person. Let yourself grieve. There's no timeline for this. There's no moving on too quickly or staying in it too long. Grief moves at its own pace. And if you try to bypass it, if you try to skip to acceptance and forgiveness before you've actually grieved, then you'll find yourself trapped in the cycle. You'll find yourself minimizing what happened. You'll find yourself making excuses. You'll find yourself back in the same dynamic or a very similar one. What comes after grief is integration. And this is where you take all of what happened, all of the pain and the confusion and the insight, and you weave it into your life story in a way that doesn't define you, but informs you. You recognize that this experience shaped you, changed you, taught you, and you choose what to take from it. You keep the strength you developed. You keep the perceptiveness about people that suffering taught you. You keep the hard-won understanding that you deserve better. But you don't carry the shame. You don't carry the belief that you're broken. You don't carry the fear that this will happen again. Those things you release, and you release them deliberately. Not by forgetting, but by choosing not to organize your life around them anymore. This is what true healing looks like. Not amnesia, not pretending it didn't hurt, but reclaiming your life from the experience rather than having your life still be defined by it. Your story doesn't end with what happened to you. Your story continues with what you did about it. And if you've had the courage to face these truths, if you're still here reading this, then you've already begun. You've spent so long away from yourself that home has started to feel dangerous. But home, that's you. That's your needs. That's your desires. That's your full, complex, contradictory, messy humanity. That's the part of you that was there before anyone hurt you. That's the part that remained there even while you were busy becoming what someone else needed you to be. And yes, that journey away from home felt like love. Because when we're young and we want connection so badly, we'll mistake almost anything for it. We'll mistake intensity for intimacy. We'll mistake control for caring. We'll mistake emotional chaos for passion. But none of that is love. None of that is connection. None of that is what you actually deserve. Real love is boring sometimes. Real connection allows you to be yourself. Real partnership means someone is invested in your growth, not in your compliance. And the path back to that, the path back to yourself, starts now. Not with someone else rescuing you, not with another relationship healing you, not with external validation finally convincing you that you're worth something, but with you alone, deciding that you've had enough, deciding that you matter, deciding that the next time someone shows you who they are through their actions, you'll believe them the first time, not the 100th time, deciding that connection without respect is not connection, deciding that attention without consistency is not love, deciding that you're willing to be alone for a while rather than be with the wrong person forever. These decisions are not dramatic. They don't feel big in the moment, but they are the foundation of every life that's freed from destructive patterns. What I want you to understand is this: the psychological patterns that keep you trapped in these relationships are not a sign of weakness. They're a sign that you're capable of deep loyalty, profound empathy, and boundless patience. Those are your gifts. But like all gifts, they can be used or misused. And in a destructive relationship, they're being misused. They're being weaponized against you. The work is not to become less empathetic, less loyal, less patient. The work is to redirect that capacity toward the people who deserve it. Most importantly, toward yourself. You've given enough. You've tried hard enough. You've sacrificed enough. And it's time to take all of that effort, all of that love, all of that devotion, and give it back to the only person who will actually appreciate it: you. If this video reached you when you needed to hear it, if something in these words resonated with a part of you that's been waiting for permission to leave, then I want you to know that you have that permission. Not from me, from yourself. The part of you that knew long ago that this wasn't right. The part of you that's been whispering, even while you were telling yourself to stay. Listen to that part. Trust that part. Let that part lead you home. And if you're ready to go deeper into this work, if you want to understand not just what happened to you, but why it happened and how to make sure it never happens again, then subscribe to this channel. Because the journey doesn't end here. The real transformation is just beginning. And you don't have to do it alone. I'm here. This community is here. And we're all learning how to finally come home to ourselves. I'll see you in the next video.